dark of the night, whispers of deceit.
Shadows dance on the walls.
Secrets they repeat. A shadowed figure
with eyes full of lies.
hiding truths in the shadows where no one dares to pry. Uncover the truth, let the lies come undone. Peel back the layers until the light is shown. Uncover the truth, let the shadows run. Break free from the chains and find the sun. Uncover the truth in the dead of the night, where secrets lie hidden like a whispered bite. Uncover the truth in the dim of the light, where betrayals take root in the heart of the fight. In the rain-soaked streets, under the moon's pale light, a crime unfolds with a twisted, sinister might. A knife in the dark, a scream that rings clear, betrayal's cold hand.
Knife in the dark.
You know, it sounds like a superhero song, like, you know, Superman or Batman. It sounds like it'd be their theme music. But for Bloodlines and Betrayals, I don't know. I mean, it's like we're solving crime. We're out there on the street, you know, putting our lives on the line to solve mysteries. It's pretty amazing.
We're doing.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And I'm the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully, with my deputy detective, Coach Schumann. How are you?
I'm doing great.
You must have had a long prospect podcast. Did you have a good prospect podcast today?
No, I didn't have one today. I have it tomorrow and Friday.
Oh, you didn't have one today. Okay.
Yeah, I have my league today, so got a bunch of things going on there.
Oh, you got you're leaving today? You got a tournament?
No, my league. I have my league tonight.
Oh, your league. Oh, that's right. Your league. That's right.
So as soon as I get done here, I gotta jump over and get all the stuff.
Is it baseball?
No. Flag.
It's a flag football. Okay. Well,
yeah, that's the league I run.
We're reviewing the proverbial case of the century for this century, which has to do with Casey Anthony. I was enthralled with this case from the start. Back in 2008. I have no idea how it happened, but my TV channel happened to be on CNN, and what's her face covered it intently. She called Casey Anthony the top mom. The top mom. What's the blonde lady's name from CNN? She used to have her own show. She was very controversial.
Maybe Caylee?
No. God, I just read it.
I don't watch CNN.
Oh, yeah. She was a former prosecutor.
Okay.
And she had her own show. She ended up getting fired, but she really covered the case extensively. And for some reason, I happened to have it on, and she was on, and that's how I got invested in the case from the start. It was basically very, very odd. It was June 8th, 2008. Casey Anthony left her parents' house, and she said that she was going on a work trip to Tampa. For 30 days, the parents never saw their granddaughter, George and Cindy Anthony. Never saw her. And basically, her car, Casey Anthony's car, was impounded. And when her father, George, went to pick it up, he said he smelled decomposition. The mother came too. She said that it smelled like a dead body was in the car. But they both changed their stances when they testified, saying that it was just trash that was in the back seat. So Casey, during these 30 days, she went on like a spring break tour. She was going to wet t-shirt contests. She was going out.
Way.
Yes, she was going out every night. She was partying. And it was basically, Caylee was only 2, I believe, at the time. And Casey had her young. And it was never known really.
She's only 39 now.
Yeah, I know. This was in 2011 when she went to trial. The disappearance was in 2008. So it was the parents that called the cops because, they honestly just believed Caylee was taken. They didn't think anything more than that. They didn't think, obviously, that
her parents called the cops.
Yes, George and Cindy called the cops because they didn't believe that Casey would be involved with anything like that. So the cops came, and there were just a lot of inconsistencies in her story. She said that she left her apartment and she gave her daughter to this nanny, Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, and Fernandez Gonzalez kidnapped the toddler. But police tracked down, this name, Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, and the apartment had been abandoned for more than 140 days. So that was like the first clue, like how could this be? You said it's been 30 days. This apartment has been closed out for 140 days. And Casey had told them that she'd been taking Caylee there regularly. And then she said that she had a job working at Universal Studios. So investigators said, okay, take us to your job. July 16th, they asked her to show her their office, and she took detectives into the building before admitting she no longer worked there. And she hadn't worked there in 3 years since she took maternity leave. After that, she was arrested there, but not for murder or anything. It was for just lying to police officers or whatnot. And they actually offered her a deal, a limited immunity deal, to help the police find Caylee. So after that, Casey's parents went on the Today Show. They maintained their belief Caylee was still alive and would be found. The other important aspect of it that I always found amusing was Leonard Padilla, who is a bounty hunter, and he runs Texas EquiSearch. Okay. Casey was arrested. She was charged with giving false statements to law enforcement, child neglect, and obstruction of the criminal investigation. The judge denied bail, which is highly unlikely in a case like that. But that's what the judge did. So Leonard Padilla put up the bail money for Casey Anthony, basically saying, she's going to help find the missing daughter. When they brought Casey back to the house, there was a crowd, just they were around the Anthony residence, like a lynch mob, just wanting to kill her. It was vicious. And then Casey never communicated with Leonard Padilla. Now, they had volunteers. They searched and they searched and they searched. Nothing was ever found. It wasn't until October she was indicted by the grand jury on first-degree murder charges. And then they announced in April of 2009 that they were going to seek the death penalty. And like I said, it's just funny how the attorneys happened. The prosecution attorneys were Linda Burdick. She was awesome. She did a great job. And for the defense, it was, like I said, Jose Baez, who had never tried a murder case. And they forced him to kind of pair up with someone who had experience. And that's where they got Cheney Mason from. Cheney Mason was an experienced litigator down there. It took until 2011 for it to go to trial. And it was what they did. This was smart. I mean, they sequestered the juries, and they sequestered the jury. They took a jury from Pinellas County and brought them to Orlando, and it was 9 women and 8 men. It was a 6-week long trial. Belvin Perry was the judge, and the prosecution had a ton of evidence because her body wasn't found until December of that year. It wasn't found until December, but because so much time had passed, because of the weather in Florida, they said homicide was a probable cause, but they could not determine the manner of death. So when you can't determine the manner of death, you can't determine intent. So that's Jose Baez, his theory. What the defense said: Caylee drowned in the family pool, and that George, the father, with Casey's knowledge, covered up the drowning in order to help his daughter. The defense also said that Casey...
what would be the point in covering up the drowning? I don't understand that.
People do different things when they're in shock. People panic. People don't think they're going to be believed. I mean, that's how some people react. It happens often. They'll try to cover it up. So it was odd because the prosecution were the ones to call Casey's family to the stand. They called her father to the stand, and they asked him straight up if he sexually abused his daughter, and he was furious by this. He said no. Casey had a boyfriend at the time, and she said that he said that Casey told her she was with the nanny, there was no problems, and he was very close to the daughter, and he even became concerned. And I think he called the parents about it. And then, when they did a search warrant on the parents' house, they found some deleted searches on the Anthony computer. Chloroform was searched 84 times. Household weapons was searched. Neck breaking was searched. So it's crazy that chloroform was searched that many times. Now, the other evidence that was used in this case that was brand new was the scent of human decomposition. There were dogs that were trained to detect human decomposition. This was the first trial that evidence was ever used. And the chief medical examiner testified she determined that the manner of death to be homicide based on the physical and circumstantial evidence because they put a heart-shaped sticker on the mouth of Caylee Anthony. But after searching for chloroform, toxicology came up negative for any of the chemicals. So it was back and forth. There were no fingerprints found on the tape that was used to wrap the body. And she was only buried like a mile from the house where a lot of people in the neighborhood would bury their dead pets. And they saw that there was hair on the tape that showed it was in Casey's car, and it showed to belong to Caylee. And they examined the root banding, and it showed that it was in there post-mortem, that she had already been dead and she had been transferred by the car. The key to the case, in my opinion, was legendary pathologist Dr. Werner Spitz. If you've heard of him, he's testified in many high-profile cases. I think he testified in the Menendez one. I have to check. But he did an autopsy on Caylee as well. He said that the prosecution did a shoddy job with their autopsy. They failed to open up Caylee's skull. They failed to determine many factors, and he could not conclusively rule that the death was a homicide. And his opinion was the duct tape, because she was wrapped in duct tape. It was placed post decomposition, and especially the sticker. He said that the sticker would have had, and the tape would have had residual DNA, which it did not. The other interesting part was the mother, Cindy, testified for the defense. And she claims she was responsible for the chloroform search on the family computer, claiming that she meant to search chlorophyll and misremembered the term. But her work records indicated that she had been at work in times the search was conducted. They could have charged her with perjury, but they never did. Cindy also testified that they buried their pets in blankets and plastic bags and used duct tape to seal the opening, which is exactly how Caylee was buried. The other thing, I don't know if it was mentioned or not, George Anthony actually attempted to commit suicide several months after this. Yes. Several months after this, he wrote a note saying he was going to be with Caylee, and he took a bunch of pills. He went into a motel room and was going to die, but they found him and got him help. It was also announced on June 30th during the trial that Crystal Holloway, this was key, she was a volunteer in the search for Caylee, had an affair with George Anthony, the father. And George allegedly testified to her that this was an accident that snowballed out of control. And then during, the prosecution said that Holloway gave a sworn police statement in which she said that it was an accident. She believed it was an accident in her sworn police statement. So that gave somewhat reasonable doubt. Werner Spitz gave a lot of reasonable doubt. Hey, Casey's actions when her daughter was missing basically show the guilt, because you're talking about a girl who's out partying every night in Florida. She's going to wet t-shirt contests. She basically was being held down by her daughter. They showed a lot of videos of them interacting and saying like a mother would never do this to her daughter. She loved the daughter, and it really wasn't enough. The closing arguments happened on July 3rd and July 4th, because I remember I watched the trial. I listened to it start from finish. And again, Jeff Ashton and Linda Drain Burdick for the prosecution both said Casey killed Caylee to free herself of her parental duties. When you have a child, that child becomes your life, as you know. This case is about the clash between that responsibility and the expectations that go with it. And if you look at it, Casey was like 20 when she had the kid. So, and to this day, there's been no, I guess, no investigation into who the father is. No DNA testing. So that was very, very odd that, they just took her at her word. The father died in a car accident. I don't know his name. It was a one night stand. So
Really?
yeah. The other interesting part, Jose Baez, when he gave his closing statements, the judge in the case, Judge Belvin Perry, said specifically he could not address the abuse claims because he had said George Anthony abused Casey, given the lack of evidence presented at trial, and emphasized the circumstantial nature of the prosecution's case, saying it was based on fantasy, computer searches. And Jose Baez went on to say that this is all just fancy smoke and mirrors, fancy forensics, stickers, stains. There's no real hard evidence, no eyewitnesses, no DNA. The only DNA was the hair in the car, but she lived with her, so the hair could have come from everywhere. And Baez said there's a reasonable hypothesis of innocence in light of the possibility that Anthony had drowned, further contending that the drowning was the only explanation that made sense. And he illustrated this with a video showing how Caylee was able to open the sliding glass door at the parents' house, which did not have a child safety lock on it. And he criticized the prosecution for their heavy use of character evidence. Because, this was like a 6-week trial, and the prosecution called mainly associates of Casey Anthony to say she's a bad person. That's all they really did. They called people to say, oh, yeah, she liked to party, she liked to drink. But they would also say she loved her daughter.
It seems like she didn't want the responsibility.
No, I don't think so either.
The question is, the crazy part is that they couldn't prove anything. Like there wasn't any harm or anything on her. I guess the body was so decomposed.
Correct.
At that point.
Yeah. But they were trying the main prosecution.
It should be enough to. I can't believe that there was reasonable doubt in this case.
She wasn't beheaded. She was wrapped up, but she was wrapped up in a manner that the Anthonys would wrap their pets. But they also said everyone in the neighborhood kind of wrapped their pets that way. But Werner Spitz was very effective because the prosecution timeline was June 6th was the last time anyone saw Caylee Anthony alive. She wasn't found until December of that year. Werner Spitz tried to show that based on his testing and his autopsy, she was alive like well into July. And that the heat and the wetlands from Florida brought on accelerated decomposition. So if that timeline is disrupted with, that's reasonable doubt. The prosecution kept pounding home June 6th. That was the last time the parents saw her. That was the last time the boyfriend saw her. That was the last time anyone saw her. So Jose Baez was smart to say, okay, well, our expert, Werner Spitz, who has, I'm pretty sure Werner Spitz testified at the inquest of Elvis. Like he's been around 90 something years. He's testified at major trials. He has much more experience than the prosecution medical examiner, but he kept saying that she was alive in July. She could have been alive into August. You're talking 6 months going into December.
So how was she? Where were they keeping her alive then?
No. She was definitely they think that she died in July or August, and that Caylee had interaction with her then, and that she drowned in the pool, and that George her father was complicit in helping her hide the body. That's incredible. That's what they did. So on July 5th, the other thing that still blows my mind, and it just goes to show you what jurors look at and the life of a juror. I mean, 6 weeks, you're sequestered. You're living in a hotel. You're being bussed to and from the trial. You're having the same tuna sandwich for lunch every day. Your life is miserable. And they didn't deliberate very long. They didn't deliberate very long, because I told you the jury deliberations began July 4th. And then on July 5th, they were about to break for the day, and the jury had a verdict. So you're telling me 6
that was
weeks,
shocking.
6 weeks, 6 freaking weeks of evidence, 6 weeks of testimony, and in less than 24 hours total of deliberation, you got your verdict? Like, you went through all of it and you figured it out? So they found her not guilty on counts 1 through 3, which was first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and aggravated child abuse. They found her guilty on counts 4 through 7, which were all misdemeanors, which was providing false information to law enforcement, saying that she worked at Universal Studios, that Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez was her nanny, and she had told 2 Universal Studios co-workers that her daughter had disappeared. And she alleged that she spoke to Caylee by phone after she had gone missing. So they actually appealed this conviction. So as a result of this, based on time served, because she was in jail for over 2 years waiting for her trial, she was set free.
Would you be dating her?
Oh yeah, I'd go out with her. I like him crazy.
You like him real crazy.
Yeah. So he sent
real crazy.
He sent it. The sentence for Caylee was 1 year in the county jail and $1,000 fines for each of the 4 counts of providing false information. Because Caylee had been incarcerated since October 2008, she got 1,000 days in time served credit. All she served was 10 days after this, the sentence was given out. Subsequently, pursuant to a little-known Florida statute requiring judges to assess investigative and prosecution costs if requested by a state agency. This is what's crazy. Judge Perry ruled that Casey Anthony had to pay $217,000 back to the state of Florida, because she more likely than knew that her daughter was dead. And so the prosecution initially wanted $516,000. Perry found her liable for $217,000. Caylee is considered indigent and will never pay this back. So she did appeal her convictions, which I find even more amazing, arguing that the false statement she provided to officers, because they broke it up into 4 different false statements and gave her 4 different charges, that it should have just been one offense and not 4 different charges.
Yes. Right.
And she was never given her Miranda rights.
How does a slam dunk case like this not get prosecuted?
Well, it was prosecuted. It was just like she was found not guilty. And they actually threw out two of the 4 offenses. So she was acquitted on almost everything. She was guilty of 2 misdemeanors for lying to police. The case attracted more media coverage, the most media coverage since the O.J. Simpson murder case. That's Nancy Grace was the one I was talking about. Nancy Grace covered this case in 2008 from day one, and that's what got me watching. I would watch Nancy Grace every night to hear updates on this case, and they cited her for causing extreme bias because she called her top mom, and she would always show pictures of her going out and doing wet t-shirt contests and hooking up with guys. So basically the jurors refused to discuss the case with people because of the Freedom of Information Act. The jurors' names were released eventually, and only one alternate juror stepped forward on the day of the verdict, and he just said the prosecution didn't provide the evidence that was there for any of the charges for first-degree murder and a death penalty case. So some people think they overcharged with the first-degree murder and death penalty down the second-degree murder. Had they tried, they could have went with criminally negligent homicide. They could have went with manslaughter. But
she's a legal advocate now.
She is. She became a legal advocate. I know she helped out with Jose Baez and his firm for a while. But largely, I mean, she gave one interview. I think she's given 2 interviews. She's still completely estranged from her brother, Lee Anthony, the father, George Anthony. The mother has some contact with her. But other than that, there was a huge gender gap in perceptions of the case. Two-thirds of Americans, 64%, believed Caylee definitely or probably murdered the daughter. However, women were much more likely than men to believe the murder charges were valid and were pissed off by the not guilty verdict. Men were more open-minded, I guess, about it because, they say that the attractive woman will get off. The public was truly invested in this case. But there was no true concrete evidence. It was all circumstantial from the start. But I mean, if you look at the MO, there's nobody else that would have had a motive for the daughter's death. Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez sued Caylee for defamation in July of 2021. Texas EquiSearch, which was what I told you, Leonard Padilla bailed her out of jail to try to find the kid. They sued her, estimating they spent more than $100K searching for Caylee, even though Caylee knew she was dead. The guy that found the body, Roy Kronk, was a public worker, and he was even considered a subject, and he sued Caylee for defamation because during the trial, Jose Baez said, he could have been involved with it. But Caylee had already declared bankruptcy, and she doesn't have any money. So
yeah, she's got nothing.
Yeah. So it's just amazing to see that it's amazing that this happened. It's amazing to see that, you know, being a hot chick can work to your advantage in some cases instead of being a femme fatale. You know, the circumstantial evidence killed the case, but again, common sense isn't so common. Who else would have
Yeah, I
benefited
mean, I can't
from the
believe the
death of a
juror,
2-year-old
all
girl?
12 jurors that found her innocent is
Well,
shocking to me.
they're going by the law. They don't have they have two medical experts giving different testimony as far as cause of death. Werner Spitz was by far more world renowned and well known. If you look up Werner Spitz, look at the cases he's been involved with. The air evidence was brand new, saying that you could smell decomposition. I'd love to see what Chat GPT said about that. But they tried to show that the air coming from the trunk of her car was decomposition. That had never been used before. Cadaver dogs hit on certain areas in the backyard, but nothing was definitive. But again, like I compared this to the OJ trial. OJ got off, but a month later, where was his life? Like, you know, he golfed occasionally. He lost all his friends, money, status. And Casey Anthony, pretty much, she lives a life of solitude. She can't go out. She's estranged. You know, OJ at least had his family. Casey does not have her family. She hasn't spoken to her father. She rarely speaks to her mother.
And she's never had any more kids.
Thank God.
Could you imagine?
I could.
Do you think it's because she wanted to party and do what t-shirt contests? I mean,
I do. I think so. I think that, you know, when you're a young mother, 19, 20 years old, and your friends are all going off to college and spring break and partying and doing this and that, and you're, you know, working at Disney, Universal Studios and taking care of a baby, it changes your perspective on life. I mean, you grow up real fast.
Yeah. Well, nobody told her to have sex.
Well, she was promiscuous. She was promiscuous, but there's no law against that. I still would like to see who the father was, and if he is indeed dead or still alive. Because if you try to search the father of Caylee Anthony, anything about it, there's no information that comes up. It's like he was with the CIA or something.
And nobody still knows who it is.
No, nobody knows who it is.
Wow.
Yeah, it is wild. It is wild.
How does she make money even?
She does odd jobs. For, like, she worked as helping the investigator with Jose Baez. She's a victim's advocate, I believe now. She declared, bankruptcy. I mean, I don't know how she survives. I mean, I believe she sleeps on a friend's couch.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a huge trial. I watched every day of it. I was pulling for her.
You were pulling for a murder.
Well, I didn't think that a mother could kill their child. I just that I couldn't wrap my head around. And if Werner Spitz was correct about the time of death being in July or August, the case was blown. But I guess I'm liberal in some ways.
Yeah, this to me doesn't seem like this to me seems like a slam dunk case that somehow got botched.
I don't know that it got botched. I just think jurors place emphasis on some things more than others. And a 6-week trial where they're sequestered, where there's that much information, that much DNA evidence, I think they just wanted to get the fuck out of there. Because they deliberated for less than 24 hours on a 6-week trial.
Wow.
You know? That's just my opinion.
That's crazy. That's a crazy case. It's amazing to me the fact that she, first of all, wasn't found guilty. Second of all, they couldn't find substantial evidence. And third of all, that
it's not substantial evidence. You got to remember, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. The threshold for criminal cases, beyond all reasonable doubt. Was there reasonable doubt? I think so.
Well, who else could have done it?
It's not who has the MO. It's beyond all reasonable doubt. I agree. Who else could have done it? I mean, is there validity to the kid accidentally drowning in the pool and George Anthony stepping in? Sure. But I unfortunately have to sign off.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
I have another podcast. Yeah.
Who do you got?
I do something with the animal shelter, our local animal shelter.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
What are you talking about?
Different fundraisers they have going on. You know, feature animals of the week. I try to help out. Try to get that.
Where do I see that?
It's on. I put it on my Facebook page. It'll be up.
Animal shelter.
Yeah, it's Anita Stephen Swan Humane Society.
Nice. Is it like down the block from you?
No, it's quite a distance, but.
Are you driving now all the time or no?
No, I have to go to the bathroom.
Oh.
I have to go to the bathroom before we start.
I'm trying to see here.
So for Bloodlines and Betrayals, just Detective Schumann. I'm Lieutenant Caylee. Remember, Casey Anthony is alive and well. Caylee Anthony, just a sad tragedy. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and hire Jose Baez.
Good job.